The silver Mercedes pulled into the parking space right in front of the Rosewood Hotel's grand entrance, and I watched from my Tesla as Alexander stepped out, straightening his designer suit. A moment later, he walked around to open the passenger door with practiced gallantry, and out stepped Victoria, his executive assistant. The same Victoria who had been working increasingly late hours with him for the past 6 months. The same Victoria who now wore the emerald pendant I had found a receipt for in Alexander's jacket last month, when he had told me he was buying his mother a birthday present. I gripped my steering wheel tighter, but not from heartbreak. No. What I felt as I watched them walk into the hotel's 5-star restaurant was something entirely different. Anticipation. You see, while Alexander was busy building his carefully constructed web of lies, I had just received an email that would shatter his perfect little world. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Before we continue with how this all unfolds, I want to thank you for being here. If you enjoy stories about redemption, justice, and unexpected twists of fate, take a moment to subscribe. It's free, and it helps our community grow. Now, let's dive back into the moment everything changed. I checked my watch, an elegant Cartier that Alexander had given me on our last anniversary, probably to ease his guilty conscience. The time read 7:30 p.m. In exactly 15 minutes, my grandmother's lawyer would arrive at this very restaurant. Alexander had no idea I knew about his dinner plans tonight. He thought I was at home, preparing for tomorrow's charity gala, just another trophy wife keeping herself busy with social events while he worked late. The maitre d' greeted them with a practiced smile, leading them to what I knew would be Alexander's favorite corner table. The same table where we had celebrated our 3rd wedding anniversary just last year. Back then, I had been the one on his arm, believing in the perfect life we had built together. The successful investment banker and his supportive wife, living in our penthouse apartment, attending all the right social events, making all the right connections. The valet approached my car, but I waved him away with a polite smile. I wasn't ready to go in just yet. I needed these few moments to compose myself, to remember everything my grandmother had taught me during those quiet Sunday afternoons at her estate. While everyone else saw her as just another wealthy widow who lived off her late husband's fortune, I knew the truth. She had been the real business genius behind their empire, the silent force that had turned a modest inheritance into a billion-dollar investment company. "Never let them see your full hand until the right moment, Sophia," she used to tell me, her eyes twinkling with wisdom as she sipped her Earl Grey. "Men like your grandfather, like your Alexander, they need the world to know their power. But real power? Real power doesn't need to announce itself." My phone buzzed with a text from Mr. Richardson, my grandmother's lawyer. "In position, whenever you're ready." I took one final deep breath, checked my reflection in the rear-view mirror, and stepped out of my car. The crisp autumn air carried the scent of nearby jasmine, and I straightened my Chanel blazer, the one Alexander had said was too severe for someone who didn't need to work. The maitre d' recognized me immediately. Of course he did. Alexander and I were regulars here, or at least we had been. His eyes widened slightly as he realized my husband was already seated with another woman, but his professional training kicked in instantly. "Mrs. Blackwood, what a pleasure. Your usual table." "Actually," I smiled, letting just a hint of steel show in my expression, "I'll be joining Mr. Richardson in the private dining room." I could see the subtle shift in his demeanor. The private dining room was reserved for the restaurant's most elite guests, the owners of the hotel chain, visiting dignitaries, and occasionally, the true power players of our city's business world. As I walked through the main dining area, I caught Alexander's eye for just a moment. The color drained from his face as he registered my presence, his hand freezing midway to his wine glass. Victoria, facing away from me, continued talking, oblivious to the sudden tension in her companion's posture. I didn't break stride, didn't give him the satisfaction of a reaction. Let him sweat. The private dining room was exactly as I remembered it from my grandmother's frequent business meetings. Here, Rich mahogany panels lined the walls, and a single elegant chandelier cast warm light over the massive table. Mr. Richardson stood as I entered, his silver hair and impeccable suit a testament to his decades as my grandmother's most trusted advisor. "Mrs. Blackwood," he said warmly, though I could detect a hint of concern in his voice. He had known about Alexander's indiscretions. My grandmother had made sure of that. "Are you certain you want to do this now?" I took my seat at the head of the table, where my grandmother used to sit. "There's no better time, James. Is everything prepared?" He nodded, opening his briefcase to reveal a stack of documents. "Your grandmother's final instructions were very specific. Upon verification of..." He paused delicately. "Certain circumstances, the full control of Blackwood International was to pass directly to you, bypassing the trust she had initially established. My grandmother's final gift, not just the company she had built, but the means to reclaim my dignity. She had known about Alexander's character long before I had been willing to see it. She had prepared for this moment, setting up a complex series of conditions that would give me complete control of not just her company, but the very foundation of Alexander's success. What Alexander had never known, what his pride had never let him discover, was that his own investment firm's biggest client was a subsidiary of my grandmother's company. His success, his reputation, his precious corner office in the city's most prestigious building, all of it rested on connections that had been quietly orchestrated by my grandmother years ago. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. The maitre d' entered, his expression carefully neutral. "Mrs. Blackwood, Mr. Blackwood has asked if he might join you for a moment." I exchanged a glance with Mr. Richardson, who gave me a slight nod. Everything was in place. The documents were signed. The transfers were complete. Alexander's world was about to shift on its axis, and he didn't even know it yet. "Please," I said, my voice steady and clear, "show my husband in." Alexander's footsteps echoed against the mahogany floors as he entered the private dining room, his usual confident stride noticeably unsteady. The golden light from the chandelier caught the silver in his temples, the distinguished gray I had once found so attractive, now just another reminder of the years I had spent believing in his lies. Victoria hadn't followed him in. No doubt, she was still sitting at their corner table, wondering why her evening of romance had suddenly derailed. "Sophia," he started, his voice carrying that smooth, practiced tone he used when closing major deals. "I can explain everything." He remained standing near the doorway, as if uncertain of his welcome in this sanctuary of old money and power. His eyes darted between me and Mr. Richardson, clearly trying to piece together what was happening. I let the silence stretch, taking a slow sip of water from the crystal glass before me. My grandmother had taught me the power of silence, how it could make even the most confident man reveal his hand too early. The massive oil painting behind me, a stormy seascape that had witnessed countless business deals, seemed to watch our drama unfold with quiet interest. "Please, do explain," I finally said, my voice carrying the same gentle strength my grandmother had wielded like a fine blade. "Tell me about your meeting with Victoria, the one you said was a late conference call with Tokyo investors." I placed my glass down with deliberate care, enjoying how the subtle clink made him flinch. Alexander smoothed his tie, a nervous tell I had noticed years ago but had chosen to ignore. "Darling, you know how crucial these international dealings are. Victoria's expertise in Asian markets is invaluable. We were simply..." "Is her expertise enhanced by the emerald pendant you bought her?" I interrupted, watching his facade crack slightly. "The one you claimed was for your mother's birthday? Interesting choice, considering your mother prefers sapphires, something you'd know if you'd attended any of our family dinners in the past 6 months." Mr. Richardson cleared his throat softly, reminding us both of his presence. He began laying out documents on the polished table, each paper carrying the weight of my grandmother's final machinations. Alexander's eyes were drawn to the Blackwood, international letterhead, his expression shifting from practiced contrition to genuine concern. "What's going on here, Sophia? Why are you meeting with Eleanor's lawyer?" The slight tremor in his voice betrayed his growing unease. Alexander had always prided himself on being the smartest person in any room, but tonight he was several steps behind, and he knew it. I stood slowly, running my hand along the smooth wooden table as I walked toward the window. The city lights sparkled below, a constellation of ambitions and secrets. Did you know that grandmother never really retired? That's what everyone believed. What you believed. The quiet widow, living off her late husband's legacy, occasionally making small investments to keep herself occupied. Turning back to face him, I saw confusion cloud his features. Of course she retired. She handed everything over to the board 10 years ago. Everyone knows that. Everyone knows what she wanted them to know, I corrected him, moving to stand beside Mr. Richardson. The truth, Alexander, is that while you were building your reputation on other people's foundations, my grandmother was teaching me how to run an empire. Mr. Richardson handed me a particular document, and I felt its weight in more than just paper. You see, Blackwood International never went to the board. The company restructuring was a masterpiece of subtle misdirection. Every major decision, every significant investment over the past decade came from her private office, including, ironically, the funding that launched your investment firm. Alexander's face paled as the implications began to sink in. He took an involuntary step forward, his hands reaching for the documents I held. That's impossible. My firm. I built that from nothing. I secured those investors myself. Did you? I asked softly, letting a touch of pity color my tone. Think carefully, Alexander. Remember that mysterious Asian investment group that provided your initial capital? The one that seemed so impressed with your business plan? That was grandmother, working through one of her shell corporations. The truth hit him like a physical blow. I watched as he sank into one of the high-backed chairs, his carefully constructed world beginning to crumble. But why? Why would she do that? Because she saw you for what you were long before I was willing to, I replied, my voice steady despite the emotion threatening to break through. She knew you would show your true colors eventually, and she wanted to make sure that when you did, I would have everything I needed to stand on my own. Mr. Richardson produced another document, this one bearing today's date. Mrs. Blackwood now holds controlling interest in Blackwood International, including all subsidiary companies and investments. This includes, of course, the majority stake in your firm, Alexander. The weight of realization crashed over him in waves. Every success he had claimed as his own, every deal he had bragged about at countless dinner parties, had been carefully orchestrated by the very woman he had dismissed as a retired widow. And now, that same woman had ensured that his fate rested in the hands of the wife he had betrayed. Sophia, please, he started, but I held up my hand, silencing him mid-plea. You have a choice to make, Alexander. Right now, Victoria is sitting at our favorite table, probably checking her phone, wondering what's taking so long. Your reputation, your firm, your entire career hangs in the balance. What happens next depends entirely on how you handle the next few minutes. The city lights continued their silent dance beyond the window, unaware of the drama unfolding in their midst. In the polished surface of the table, I caught my reflection. Poised, composed, every inch my grandmother's heir. The time for being the quiet, supportive wife was over. Tonight, I would show Alexander, Victoria, and the world exactly what kind of woman had been hiding in plain sight all along. The grandfather clock in the corner of the private dining room chimed softly, marking the hour. 8 distinct chimes that seemed to echo the racing of my heart. Through the partially open door, I could see Victoria fidgeting at her table, her perfectly manicured nails drumming against her wine glass. She had no idea she was about to become collateral damage in a game that had been in motion for years. Your firm's latest merger, I said, breaking the heavy silence as I pulled another document from the stack. The Davidson Group acquisition that you've been so proud of. Did you ever wonder why they accepted your surprisingly low offer? I slid the paper across the polished mahogany toward Alexander, watching as his eyes widened at the familiar letterhead. His hands trembled slightly as he picked up the document. I could see the exact moment comprehension dawned in his eyes. The Davidson Group had been owned by one of my grandmother's holding companies for the past decade. Their acceptance of his offer hadn't been a testament to his negotiation skills. It had been yet another piece in my grandmother's elaborate chess game. All this time, he whispered, his voice hoarse. Every major deal, every lucky break. He looked up at me, really seeing me perhaps for the first time in our marriage. How long have you known? I moved to the wet bar in the corner, pouring myself a glass of the same vintage Merlot my grandmother had favored. Grandmother started teaching me the business when I was in college. All those Sunday afternoons you thought I spent having tea with a doting grandmother? I was learning about shell corporations, international finance, and the art of invisible influence. The crystal decanter caught the light as I set it down, creating dancing patterns on the wall. While you were sleeping with your executive assistant, I was sitting on the board of 3 major corporations. While you were buying Victoria Emerald pendants, I was orchestrating multinational mergers. The difference is, I never needed everyone to know what I was capable of. A soft knock at the door interrupted us. The maitre d' entered with his characteristic discretion. Pardon the interruption, Mrs. Blackwood, but Miss Chen is asking about Mr. Blackwood's return. His tone was perfectly professional, but I caught the slight disapproval in his glance toward Alexander. Please inform Miss Chen that Mr. Blackwood will be delayed indefinitely, I replied smoothly, and have her bill sent to my private account. Consider it a parting gesture. The maitre d' nodded once and withdrew, closing the door silently behind him. Alexander straightened in his chair, a flash of his usual arrogance returning. You can't just dismiss her like that. She's a key member of my team, essential to several ongoing projects. Is that what we're calling it now? I took another sip of wine, savoring its rich complexity. Tell me, Alexander, does your key team member know that her position exists only because I approved the budget expansion for your department 6 months ago? Or that her generous salary comes from a discretionary fund that I control? The color drained from his face again. That's impossible. Those authorizations came from the board. The board? I couldn't help but laugh softly. You mean the same board that includes 3 of my grandmother's oldest friends and 2 of my former classmates from business school? The same board that has been kept informed of your extracurricular activities for the past year? Mr. Richardson, who had been silently organizing documents during our exchange, chose this moment to interject. Perhaps, Mr. Blackwood, you should review the latest amendments to your employment contract. He slid another document across the table. Pay particular attention to the morality clause. I watched as Alexander scanned the document, his jaw clenching as he reached the relevant section. The morality clause had been my grandmother's idea, a subtle addition that had seemed like standard legal language at the time. Now it was a noose tightening around his neck. You're going to fire me? Over a personal matter? His voice rose slightly, indignation warring with fear. The shareholders would never stand for it. Fire you? I shook my head, moving to stand by the window. Again, the city sprawled below us, a glittering testament to ambition and consequence. Oh no, Alexander. That would be too simple, too. Inelegant. Grandmother taught me better than that. I turned to face him, channeling every ounce of power that had been cultivated in me over the years. You're going to stay right where you are, doing exactly what you've always done. Only now, you'll do it knowing that every decision, every deal, every success you claim comes at my discretion. You'll Sit in your corner office accepting congratulations for achievements that I orchestrate. You'll smile at board meetings while implementing strategies that I devise. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on either of us. For years, he had treated me as an ornamental wife, someone to stand quietly at his side at social functions, while he basked in what he thought was his own success. Now those roles would be reversed, but with one crucial difference: he would have to live with the knowledge of his true position. "And if I refuse?" he asked, but we both knew it was an empty challenge. "Then every deal you've claimed credit for over the past 5 years will be revealed as the carefully managed productions they were. Every award, every magazine profile, every speaking engagement, all built on foundations you didn't even know existed. Your reputation wouldn't survive it." I paused, letting that sink in. And of course, Victoria's rather generous severance package would disappear. The mention of Victoria seemed to deflate the last of his resistance. He slumped in his chair, the weight of reality finally settling fully on his shoulders. Through the doorway, I could see her being escorted out by the maitre d', her confusion and embarrassment evident in every step. Another piece moved on the board, another player dismissed from the game. The grandfather clock chimed the quarter hour, its soft tones filling the silence that had fallen between us. In just 45 minutes, I had transformed from the seemingly naive wife to the revealed power behind his throne. My grandmother would have appreciated the symmetry of it all, how years of careful planning had culminated in this perfect moment of revelation. The door to the private dining room opened once more, this time admitting Jonathan Pierce, the CFO of Blackwood International. His presence made Alexander sit up straighter, a flash of hope crossing his features. Jonathan had been his ally on the board for years, or so he believed. The reality, like everything else tonight, was far more complex. "Mrs. Blackwood," Jonathan nodded to me respectfully before acknowledging Alexander with a cooler, "Mr. Blackwood." He placed his leather portfolio on the table and took a seat beside Mr. Richardson. The subtle shift in his demeanor wasn't lost on Alexander, whose expression darkened as he realized another pillar of his perceived power base was crumbling. "Jonathan," Alexander started, leaning forward. "Surely you can't be serious about all this. We've worked together for years. You know what I've built." "What you've built," Jonathan interrupted, his tone surprisingly sharp. "Alexander, I've spent the past 5 years implementing Mrs. Eleanor Blackwood's strategies while letting you take credit for them. Do you really think the Zhang merger just fell into your lap? Or that the European expansion succeeded because of your market intuition?" I watched as each word hit Alexander like a physical blow. Jonathan had been my grandmother's choice for CFO long before Alexander had championed his promotion to the board. Another piece carefully positioned on her chessboard, another player in her long game. "The quarterly reports," I said softly, drawing both men's attention. "Show him, Jonathan." From his portfolio, Jonathan extracted a series of financial statements, the real ones, not the simplified versions Alexander had been receiving. As he spread them across the table, I could see Alexander's eyes widening as he took in the true scope of what he'd been unknowingly part of. "These numbers. This isn't possible," he muttered, scanning page after page. "These subsidiary companies, these holdings. When did all this—" "While you were building your reputation as the golden boy of finance," I interjected. "My grandmother was quietly building an empire that made your achievements look like a child's pocket money. Every time you bragged about closing $1 million deal, she was orchestrating billion-dollar movements behind the scenes." The crystal glasses on the sidebar caught the chandelier's light, creating prisms that danced across the financial documents. It felt fitting, illumination spreading across the truth he'd been too blind to see. I moved to the window again, looking out at the city that had always been more my grandmother's domain than his. "Do you remember the Cartier Industries deal last spring?" I asked, not turning around. "The one you were so proud of negotiating over that weekend in the Hamptons?" While you were actually with Victoria at the plaza? The sharp intake of breath behind me confirmed he remembered. That deal was arranged 6 months earlier, during one of my grandmother's bridge games. Mrs. Carter and she had been friends for decades. But the negotiations, the terms, Alexander's voice trailed off as another realization hit him. The terms were exactly what I suggested. No, Jonathan corrected. The terms were exactly what Mrs. Blackwood knew you would suggest. She spent years studying your patterns, your approaches. It wasn't hard to predict how you would handle each situation, what deals you would pursue, what strategies you would employ. I turned back to face the room, taking in the scene before me. Alexander, surrounded by papers that proved his entire career had been orchestrated by others. Jonathan, finally able to openly acknowledge his true allegiance. Mr. Richardson, quietly observing as my grandmother's final plans unfolded exactly as she had envisioned. Your annual bonus last year, I continued, picking up a particular document from the table. The one you used to buy that summer house in the Berkshires, where you've been taking Victoria for your business retreats. But would you like to know how that bonus was actually funded? Alexander's hand shook as he reached for the paper. His eyes scanned the document, and I watched as comprehension dawned. The bonus hadn't come from his department's performance at all. It had come from a discretionary fund my grandmother had established years ago, specifically to maintain the illusion of his success. Every achievement you've claimed, I said, my voice gentle but firm. Every accolade you've received. Every deal you've celebrated. All of it was carefully choreographed. My grandmother saw your potential, but she also saw your flaws. She knew you would never be satisfied with genuine, gradual success. You needed to be the star, the wunderkind, the man who could do no wrong. Jonathan pulled out another set of documents, the real organization chart of Blackwood International. Alexander's position, which he had always believed was near the top of the pyramid, was revealed to be several layers removed from true power. Above him were subsidiaries and holding companies, all ultimately controlled by the quiet empire my grandmother had built. Your department, Jonathan explained, his tone almost apologetic, was essentially a carefully managed theater. Every major client was already connected to us through other channels. Every independent decision you made was guided by information we ensured would reach you at precisely the right moment. The grandfather clock struck the half hour, its chimes, echoing in the heavy silence that followed this revelation. Through the window, I could see Victoria's taxi pulling away from the hotel, carrying with it the last vestiges of Alexander's carefully constructed facade. So what happens now? Alexander asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The arrogance had drained from his posture, leaving him looking smaller, older, more vulnerable than I had ever seen him. I settled into the chair at the head of the table, my grandmother's chair, now mine by right and by design. Now, Alexander, you have a choice to make. But before you decide, there's something else you need to see. I nodded to Jonathan, who reached into his portfolio one final time. The leather-bound journal Jonathan placed on the table looked deceptively simple, its burgundy cover worn with age. My grandmother's elegant handwriting filled its pages, documenting every step of her master plan over the past decade. Alexander stared at it as if it might bite him, his fingertips just brushing its edges before drawing back. Eleanor kept detailed records, Jonathan explained, carefully opening the journal to a marked page. She documented everything, her observations, her strategies, her reasons for every decision, including why she chose to let you believe you were in control all these years. The city lights beyond the window had grown brighter as night settled, casting long shadows across the private dining room. In the distance, a helicopter's searchlight swept across the skyline, momentarily illuminating our little tableau of power and revelation. Read it, I instructed softly, watching as Alexander's eyes fell to the neat script. My grandmother's words, written 5 years ago, spelled out his character assessment with devastating accuracy. Alexander craves validation above all else, the entry began. His talent lies not in business acumen, but in his ability to believe, so completely in his own superiority that others cannot help but believe it too. This makes him both useful and dangerous. He will never be satisfied with genuine achievement. He needs to believe he is extraordinary, exceptional, beyond the common measure of success. I watched his face as he read, noting how the color drained from his cheeks. My grandmother had seen through him from the very beginning, had recognized the fatal flaw that would eventually lead to this moment. She had known that his need for admiration would eventually override his judgment, that he would seek validation outside our marriage, outside the carefully constructed world she had built around him. "Keep reading," I prompted when he paused. The next section was particularly illuminating. Sophia sees his potential but not his limitations. She believes in him as young women often believe in charming men, with her heart rather than her eyes. My task, therefore, is twofold: to protect her interests while allowing her to discover the truth in her own time. The company I build now will be her inheritance, but the wisdom to run it must be earned through observation and experience. Alexander's hands trembled as he turned the page. The next entry detailed the beginning of my grandmother's elaborate mentorship. All those afternoons I had spent in her study, learning the intricacies of international finance while he assumed I was simply being social. "There's more," Jonathan said, reaching for another document. "This one might interest you particularly." He slid a file across the table, its tab marked with yesterday's date. Inside were surveillance photos, dozens of them. Alexander with Victoria at various locations over the past 6 months, each image annotated with dates, times, and locations. "You had me followed?" Alexander's voice cracked with indignation, but I merely raised an eyebrow. My grandmother had everyone followed. It was part of her due diligence. Though I must say, for someone engaged in a clandestine affair, you were remarkably indiscreet. "The plaza, Alexander? Did you really think no one would notice you using the company's preferred corporate rate for your romantic getaways?" Minister Chang from the Beijing office chose that moment to appear in the doorway, right on schedule. He bowed slightly to me before addressing Alexander in perfect English. "Ah, Mr. Blackwood, I trust you are well? I came as soon as Mrs. Blackwood requested my presence." Alexander's confusion was evident. Minister Chang had been his primary contact for the Asian market expansion, a connection he had proudly claimed to have cultivated through his own business acumen. The reality, of course, was quite different. "Minister Chang has been a close friend of my family for 3 generations, I explained, gesturing for him to join us. "Those late-night calls you thought you were handling so brilliantly? He was under strict instructions from my grandmother to let you believe you were leading the negotiations." The minister smiled apologetically. "Your presentations were always very energetic, Mr. Blackwood, though perhaps next time you might want to verify that the Mandarin phrases you use actually mean what you think they mean." A flush crept up Alexander's neck as he recalled all the times he had attempted to impress Asian clients with what he believed was sophisticated language skills. Another illusion stripped away, another pillar of his perceived excellence crumbling. Minister Chang produced his own set of documents, the real contracts that had been negotiated behind the scenes while Alexander played his part in the foreground. The figures made his eyes widen. The Asian expansion hadn't been the modest success he'd believed. It had been a billion-dollar triumph orchestrated entirely without his knowledge. "The Singapore merger next month," he said slowly, realization dawning. "That's not really still in negotiations, is it?" "The papers were signed last week, Minister," Chung confirmed. "During your grandmother's mahjong game," he added with a small nod to me. "Most productive game I've attended in years." The implications seemed to physically weigh on Alexander as he slumped in his chair. Every deal he thought he was cleverly managing, every connection he believed he had cultivated, every success he had claimed as his own. All of it had been carefully orchestrated by the very people he had underestimated. "Your office," I said quietly, drawing his attention back to me. "The one with the view of the park that you're so proud of. Did you never wonder why a subsidiary department head had better placement than 3 senior vice presidents? My grandmother chose that office specifically because it would feed your ego while keeping you within easy observation distance of her private elevator." The crystal decanter caught the light again as I poured myself another glass of wine. "Even your executive assistant pool was carefully curated. Every woman you've hired, including Victoria, was selected from a pre-approved list. My grandmother believed in maintaining certain standards of appearance for client-facing positions, though I doubt she anticipated you taking quite such a personal interest in the hiring process." A soft knock at the door heralded the arrival of more players in tonight's drama. Grace Chen, the head of our legal department, entered with 2 junior associates. The sight of them made Alexander sit up straighter. He had worked with Grace on numerous contracts and considered her an ally. "The papers are ready," Grace announced, setting her briefcase on the table. "Everything is prepared exactly as Mrs. Eleanor Blackwood specified in her final instructions." Grace Chen spread the documents across the polished mahogany table with practiced precision. The stark white papers seemed to glow under the warm chandelier light, each page marking another nail in the coffin of Alexander's presumed autonomy. She adjusted her wire-rimmed glasses and began her presentation with the same clinical efficiency that had made her my grandmother's favorite attorney. "These documents outline the restructuring of your position within Blackwood International," Grace explained, her tone professionally neutral. "You'll maintain your current title and office, but your actual authority will be significantly modified. All major decisions will require direct approval from Mrs. Sophia Blackwood or her designated board representatives." Alexander's fingers drummed against the armrest of his chair, a nervous habit I'd noticed years ago during our first dinner date. Back then I had found it endearing. Now it just seemed like another another crack in his carefully constructed facade. "And if I refuse to sign?" he challenged, though the tremor in his voice betrayed his understanding of his position. Grace's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "In that case, we move to option B." She extracted another set of documents from her briefcase. "A full audit of your department's activities over the past 5 years, including a detailed examination of certain creative expense reports. The Plaza Hotel charges, for instance, or the rather generous consulting fees paid to shell companies that seem to exist only on paper." The color drained from Alexander's face as Grace continued. "We also have some interesting documentation regarding your recent property acquisitions. The summer house in the Berkshires, for example, purchased through a holding company that somehow failed to disclose its true ownership during several key transactions. The SEC tends to take a rather dim view of such oversights." "Minister," Chang cleared his throat softly. "Not to mention certain promises made to our Asian investors that were, shall we say, less than entirely truthful. The Chinese government is particularly interested in several representations you made regarding regulatory approvals." I watched as the full weight of his situation settled over Alexander. Every escape route, every potential leverage point he might have considered had been anticipated and blocked. My grandmother's meticulous planning had ensured that he would have only one viable choice. "The terms are quite reasonable, all things considered," I offered, gesturing to the first set of documents. "You retain your position, your salary, even your company car. Your lifestyle won't change, at least not visibly. The only difference is that now you'll be working under my direct supervision, implementing strategies that I approve, closing deals that I orchestrate." The irony wasn't lost on anyone in the room. For years, Alexander had treated me as an ornamental wife, someone to be patronized and displayed at social functions while he built what he thought was his empire. Now our roles would be reversed, but with one crucial difference. He would have to live with the knowledge of his true position. There's one more thing, Grace added, producing a final document. Mrs. Eleanor Blackwood left specific instructions regarding your marriage agreement. She slid the paper across the table. In the event of a divorce, all shares and voting rights automatically revert to Sophia. Any attempt to challenge this provision triggers an immediate audit and full disclosure of all documented indiscretions. Alexander picked up the paper with trembling hands, his eyes scanning the text that effectively trapped him in a marriage he had already betrayed. The prenuptial agreement he had so smugly insisted upon years ago had been modified without his knowledge, turned into another weapon in my grandmother's arsenal. How? He whispered, looking up at me with genuine bewilderment. How did she manage all this without anyone knowing? I moved to the window, watching as the city lights twinkled below. Did you ever wonder why my grandmother insisted on hosting those weekly bridge games? The ones you dismissed as a silly hobby of old women with too much time on their hands. I turned back to face him. Every major player in this city's business world was at those games. Deals worth billions were negotiated over tea and cards, while you were chasing your small victories. Grace began organizing the signature pages, her efficient movements a stark contrast to the emotional tension in the room. You have until midnight to decide, Mr. Blackwood. Though I should mention that the audit team is already on standby, and the press release regarding the leadership changes has been drafted, both versions of it. The grandfather clock chimed 9 times, each note seeming to echo Alexander's rapidly diminishing options. Through the partially open door, I could see the main dining room beginning to empty, the evening's normal patrons unaware of the power shift occurring in their midst. Your office has already been quietly relocated, I continued, watching his reaction. The movers came this afternoon while you were having lunch with Victoria at Le Bernardin. Your new space is still executive level, of course. Appearances must be maintained, but you'll find it's somewhat more appropriately sized for your actual position within the company. The junior associates distributed pens as Grace began indicating signature lines. Each page represented another piece of Alexander's carefully constructed world, being reconstructed according to my grandmother's design. His hand shook slightly as he reached for the first document. One last thing, I added, my voice soft, but carrying clearly in the hushed room. Victoria has already received her termination notice and a very generous severance package. The contract includes a comprehensive non-disclosure agreement. She's probably reading it right now, wondering how her perfect affair with a powerful executive turned into unemployment and a gag order in the space of a single evening. The evening air had grown cool against the windows of the private dining room, forming a light mist that blurred the city lights beyond. Grace Chen gathered the signed documents with practiced efficiency, each page now bearing Alexander's increasingly unsteady signature. His fountain pen, a Mont Blanc I had given him for our 3rd anniversary, lay discarded on the table, a fitting symbol of our transformed relationship. The board meeting is scheduled for 8 tomorrow morning, Grace announced, checking her platinum watch. Mr. Blackwood, your new office orientation will begin at 7. The transition team will brief you on your modified responsibilities and reporting structure. Her tone carried the same professional detachment she might use to discuss weather forecasts or traffic patterns. Minister Chang rose from his seat, bowing slightly in my direction. Mrs. Blackwood, with your permission, I'll inform our Asian partners of the successful transition. They'll be relieved to know that the succession plan is proceeding as your grandmother arranged. The mention of partnership sparked something in Alexander's eyes, a desperate glimmer of hope. The Seoul Development Project, he blurted out. That was my initiative. My contacts, my negotiations. You can't possibly have orchestrated that, too. A small smile played at Minister Chang's lips. Ah, you mean the Young family holdings? Mrs. Eleanor Blackwood and Madam Young were schoolmates at Wellesley. They've been planning that development for the past 15 years. Your initiative was simply the final piece they needed to move forward without raising suspicions about the existing relationship. Alexander's face crumpled as another pillar of his perceived success crumbled. The Soul Project had been his pride and joy for the past year, the deal he had bragged about at every social gathering. Now it was revealed as just another carefully choreographed performance in my grandmother's grand design. The soft click of Grace's briefcase closing seemed to echo in the heavy silence. She nodded to her junior associates, who began gathering their materials with quiet efficiency. The press release will go out at 6 a.m. Marketing has prepared a comprehensive communication strategy to ensure the transition appears completely natural to both internal and external stakeholders. I moved to the wet bar, pouring a glass of sparkling water this time. The crystal tumbler caught the light, creating prisms that danced across the rich mahogany paneling. You should call your mother, Alexander. She'll want to hear about the changes from you before the announcement goes public. His head snapped up, eyes wide with sudden realization. My mother. She knew, didn't she? All this time she knew what Eleanor was planning. Martha has been one of my grandmother's closest friends for 30 years, I confirmed, watching his world unravel further. Those Sunday brunches they shared weren't just social calls. Your mother understood that this was the best way to protect both the company and the family name. The betrayal in his eyes deepened. His own mother had been part of the elaborate web my grandmother had woven, another player in the long game that had finally reached its conclusion. The polished veneer of the confident executive cracked further, revealing the lost little boy, beneath who had just discovered that even his maternal ally had chosen sides long ago. Jonathan Pierce cleared his throat softly. We should discuss tomorrow's earnings call. The market will be particularly interested in our Asian expansion projections, given the recent developments. He pulled out his tablet, bringing up a series of charts. These are the actual numbers, not the modified versions you've been working with. You'll need to familiarize yourself with them before taking questions from analysts. Alexander stared at the figures on the screen, his financial expertise allowing him to quickly grasp the magnitude of what he was seeing. The true scope of Blackwood International's operations dwarfed everything he had believed he was managing. His department, which he had thought was a major profit center, was revealed as little more than a carefully maintained facade. The private equity division in London, he said slowly, recognition dawning. Jenkins wasn't really reporting to me, was he? All those quarterly updates, the strategy sessions. Richard Jenkins reports directly to me, I confirmed. He was instructed to maintain the illusion of your authority while implementing the actual strategic initiatives my grandmother and I developed. Those late-night strategy calls you were so proud of? They were scripted, Alexander. Every recommendation you made had been pre-approved and arranged in advance. The grandfather clock struck 10, its measured chimes marking another hour of revelations. Through the windows, I could see the city settling into its nighttime rhythm, unaware that one of its self-proclaimed titans of industry had just been revealed as an elaborately maintained illusion. Your calendar has been updated for the next month, Grace added, sliding a sleek tablet across the table. You'll find your schedule has been adjusted to accommodate the new reporting structure. Your regular lunch meetings have been reassigned to more appropriate venues. Her emphasis on appropriate made Alexander flinch. No more private dining rooms for romantic interludes with executive assistants. The company car service has also been modified, I continued. All travel will now be logged and monitored through our new security protocols. The driver will report directly to my office. Another freedom curtailed, another aspect of his life brought under careful supervision. Alexander's fingers traced the edge of the tablet, its screen displaying the carefully structured prison his professional life had become. Every meeting, every call, every business lunch would now be monitored and controlled. His autonomy, like His success had been revealed as an illusion maintained at my grandmother's discretion and now transferred to my authority. A gentle knock on the private dining room door announced the arrival of Diana Walsh, my grandmother's personal assistant of 20 years. She entered with her characteristic quiet grace, carrying a familiar burgundy leather portfolio. Alexander's eyes fixed on it immediately. He had seen my grandmother consulting that portfolio countless times during board meetings, never knowing its true significance. "The transition files you requested, Mrs. Blackwood," Diana said, placing the portfolio on the table. "And I've confirmed that the penthouse has been prepared according to your specifications." Her efficient tone carried no hint of the personal drama unfolding in the room, though she had witnessed its careful orchestration over the years. The mention of the penthouse made Alexander shift uncomfortably in his chair. Our home, or rather, what he had believed was our home, was yet another piece in my grandmother's elaborate chess game. I opened the portfolio, extracting a specific document. "The penthouse apartment," I began, sliding the paper toward him, "has always been in my name. The monthly payments you've been so proud of making? They've been going into a trust account my grandmother established years ago. Every dollar you thought you were spending on our home has been quietly accumulating, earning interest, waiting for this moment." Diana produced another file. "The renovation plans have been approved by the board. The construction team begins tomorrow morning at 9. She placed architectural renderings on the table, plans to transform the penthouse's executive office, Alexander's pride and joy, into a private yoga studio. "You can't just—" Alexander started, but his protest died as Grace Chen smoothly interrupted. "Article 7 of your revised contract explicitly grants Mrs. Blackwood full authority over all residential properties held in the company's name," the attorney reminded him, "including decorating and renovation decisions." I watched as another piece of his carefully constructed world crumbled. The home office where he had spent countless evenings, working late, in reality, conducting his affair with Victoria over private video calls, would soon cease to exist. Even his personal space was no longer his to control. "The guest house in the Hamptons has also been reassigned," Diana continued, consulting her tablet. "It will serve as a corporate retreat center for junior executives. Your personal items have already been relocated to storage." The beach house had been Alexander's favorite refuge, a place where he had entertained Victoria away from prying eyes. Or so he had thought. In reality, every weekend getaway had been meticulously documented, every indiscretion recorded in preparation for this moment. "Your social calendar has also been restructured," Diana added, pulling up another document. "The charity boards you serve on have been notified of your reduced availability. Mrs. Blackwood will assume your positions on the more prestigious committees. However, you'll maintain your involvement with the local business association at a more appropriate level. Of course." Each word stripped away another layer of Alexander's perceived importance. The charitable organizations he had used to network with the city's elite would now serve as my platforms instead. His carefully cultivated social status was being dismantled, with the same precision my grandmother had used to build our corporate empire. Jonathan Pierce cleared his throat softly. "There's also the matter of the London office." He produced a series of photographs that made Alexander's face pale further. "Your quarterly trips abroad require some discussion." The images showed Alexander in various European cities, always in the company of different women. Each photograph was dated, annotated, and filed with devastating thoroughness. My grandmother's surveillance network had been far more extensive than even I had realized. "Those were business meetings," Alexander protested weakly, but the tremor in his voice betrayed him. "Indeed," I replied, my tone glacial. "Which is why they were expensed to your corporate account. The audit team has prepared a complete reconciliation. You'll find it makes for interesting reading." Grace Chen produced another document. We've prepared a repayment schedule for the misappropriated funds. The amounts will be deducted from your revised compensation package over the next 5 years. The weight of reality seemed to physically press Alexander deeper into his chair. Every aspect of his life, professional, personal, financial, was being systematically exposed and reconstructed. The confident executive who had walked into the restaurant hours ago with his mistress on his arm had been reduced to a puppet whose strings were now visibly attached to my hands. Diana's tablet chimed softly. The moving team has completed the office transition. Mr. Blackwood's personal items have been relocated to his new workspace on the 3rd floor. She paused, consulting another notification. And Miss Chen's security clearance has been revoked. Her building access was terminated 20 minutes ago. The mention of Victoria seemed to spark something in Alexander. You can't just erase people from my life, he said, a hint of his former arrogance surfacing. I have relationships, connections. You have what we allow you to have, I corrected him gently. Every business contact in your phone, every social connection you've cultivated, every relationship you've built, all of them were either arranged by my grandmother or have been fully documented by our security team. Would you like to see the files? The soft whir of Diana's tablet printing another document filled the momentary silence in the private dining room. Outside, a light rain had begun to fall, drops pattering against the windows like nature's own. Countdown to Alexander's complete undoing. She placed the freshly printed paper before him, a comprehensive list of every person he had interacted with professionally over the past 5 years, each name coded by their true allegiance. The green highlights indicate individuals directly employed by my grandmother's various enterprises, Diana explained, her voice carrying the same efficiency she used to discuss weather forecasts. Yellow marks those with long-standing family connections to Blackwood International. Red designates the people we arrange to be placed in your path at specific moments. Alexander's eyes scanned the document, the color draining from his face as he realized nearly every name was highlighted in one shade or another. Even his personal trainer, the one he had bragged about finding through exclusive connections, was marked in green. Thomas at the health club, he muttered, recognition dawning. He's been reporting to you? Thomas has been with the family for 15 years, I confirmed. My grandmother believed in maintaining a comprehensive understanding of her key employees' physical well-being. Those weekly fitness reports you thought were just for your personal records? They've been part of your personnel file since day one. The rain intensified outside, creating sheets of water that transformed the city lights into abstract watercolors. Grace Chen pulled another document from her seemingly endless supply of revelations. Your social media presence will need to be adjusted, she stated, sliding the paper across the polished table. The communications team has prepared new guidelines for your online activity. All posts will now require advance approval, and your follower count will be gradually adjusted to reflect your actual position within the company. Alexander's hand trembled as he reached for the document. His carefully curated image as a business influencer, the motivational posts, the carefully staged photos of business meetings, the humble brag updates about his supposed achievements, would now be revealed as carefully manufactured content, strategically designed to maintain the illusion of his success. Your country club membership has been transferred to the corporate account, Diana added, consulting her tablet. Access to the private dining room and executive lounge will be restricted to approved business functions only. The golf privileges remain, though your regular Saturday tea time has been reassigned to Mrs. Blackwood. Each word struck another blow to the framework of Alexander's perceived status. The club had been his sanctuary, a place where he had held court among what he thought were his peers. Now it would become just another reminder of his diminished position. Jonathan Pierce cleared his throat softly. There's also the matter of your investment portfolio. He produced a series of financial statements that made Alexander's eyes widen in disbelief. The personal trading account you've been so proud of? every successful trade was quietly guided by our financial team. The losses were real. Your actual decisions. The gains were assisted. The implications hit Alexander like a physical blow. Even his supposed financial acumen, the skill he had bragged about at countless dinner parties, had been an orchestrated illusion. My grandmother's team had been propping up his investment record, allowing him to believe in his own expertise while quietly managing the real money behind the scenes. Your broker, Richard Stevens, Jonathan continued, has been with Blackwood International since before you joined the firm. Those insider tips you thought he was slipping you? All carefully planned moves designed to maintain your confidence while keeping you within acceptable risk parameters. Diana's tablet chimed again, drawing everyone's attention. The team has completed the social media audit, she announced. We've identified all personal accounts connected to Miss Chen. The containment protocol is ready to implement at your command, Mrs. Blackwood. I nodded slowly, aware of Alexander's growing horror. Proceed with the digital cleanup. Ensure all traces of their relationship are removed from public view. We can't have anything compromising appearing in tomorrow's news cycle. The reality of modern surveillance hit Alexander full force. Every message, every photo, every digital footprint of his affair was being systematically erased by a team that had been monitoring his activities all along. His private life, like his professional one, had never been truly private. The Swiss account, he said suddenly. A last desperate grasp at independence. That's mine. You couldn't possibly... The numbered account at Credit Suisse? Grace interrupted smoothly. Opened 3 years ago through what you believed was a private banker? She produced yet another document. The bank's regional director is Mrs. Eleanor Blackwood's second cousin. The account has been monitored since its inception. The last vestiges of Alexander's financial autonomy crumbled before our eyes. Even his secret attempts at building a personal safety net had been anticipated and controlled. The grandfather clock struck 11, each chime echoing the systematic dismantling of his carefully constructed world. Your new corporate card will arrive tomorrow morning, Diana stated, making another note on her tablet. The credit limit has been adjusted to reflect your revised position. All expenses over $500 will require prior approval from Mrs. Blackwood's office. The rain had intensified into a steady downpour, transforming the city outside into a watercolor painting of blurred lights and shadows. Inside the private dining room, Diana brought forward a small wooden box inlaid with mother of pearl, my grandmother's prized possession. I had seen this box countless times during our Sunday afternoon lessons, but Alexander had never known of its existence. Your grandmother left specific instructions about when this should be opened? Diana said softly, placing the box before me. The key she handed me was small, antique, its brass surface worn smooth by years of use. Alexander watched with undisguised curiosity as I turned the key in the lock. The lid opened with a gentle click, revealing a collection of handwritten letters, each dated and sealed with my grandmother's personal wax seal. I selected the one marked with today's date. She had planned even this moment years in advance. Dear Alexander, I began reading aloud, my grandmother's elegant script flowing across the cream-colored paper. If you're hearing these words, then everything has unfolded exactly as I anticipated. You see, I recognized in you something familiar, the same hunger for acclaim that I once saw in my late husband. The mention of my grandfather made Alexander sit up straighter. Everyone knew the story of how he had built Blackwood International from nothing, or at least the version that had been carefully cultivated for public consumption. Like him, you needed the world to see you as exceptional. The difference is, my husband learned to channel that need into genuine achievement. You, my dear Alexander, chose the easier path of appearing successful, rather than doing the hard work of earning it. The words seemed to physically pain him, each sentence stripping away another layer of his carefully constructed self-image. My grandmother's letter continued, her insights cutting deeper with every line. I watched you court my granddaughter, saw how you dazzled her with your charm and ambition, but I also saw what she was too in love to notice, the hollow center of your achievements, the carefully maintained facade of success that required constant external validation. A crystal decanter caught the light, creating prisms that danced across the letter as I read. So I devised a test, one that would either forge you into the man my granddaughter deserved or reveal the truth she needed to see. Every opportunity I arranged for you, every success I orchestrated, was designed to give you the chance to grow into your potential. Diana produced a leather-bound notebook, opening it to reveal detailed observations of Alexander's behavior over the years. Each test my grandmother had arranged, each opportunity she had presented, came with comprehensive notes about his responses. Your first major deal, I continued reading, the Mitchell acquisition that launched your reputation, I arranged for you to overhear the confidential information that led to your proposal. You never questioned why such sensitive details would be discussed where you could conveniently hear them. You were too eager to claim the victory as your own. Alexander's hands gripped the arms of his chair, his knuckles white with tension. The careful construction of his entire career was being exposed, layer by layer, through the words of a woman he had underestimated until the very end. The European expansion you claimed credit for? The Asian partnerships you boasted about? All carefully orchestrated opportunities for you to prove your worth. And each time, instead of using these chances to develop real skills and understanding, you chose to focus on maintaining appearances, on building your image rather than your abilities. Grace Chen produced another file, this one containing photographs of Alexander at various business functions over the years. Each image showed him taking credit for deals and strategies that had been meticulously planned by others. But your greatest failure, my grandmother's letter continued, wasn't professional. It was personal. I gave you everything you needed to become truly successful. Resources, connections, opportunities. Most importantly, I gave you my granddaughter, a woman of remarkable intelligence and capability. And how did you repay that trust? With infidelity, with dishonesty, with the petty pursuit of ego gratification. The rain drummed against the windows, nature's percussion accompanying the systematic dismantling of Alexander's world. Diana's tablet chimed softly, displaying another incoming message, but she silenced it with a discreet tap, unwilling to interrupt this moment of revelation. So now, my dear Alexander, you face the consequences of your choices. The empire you thought you were building was never yours. The success you claimed was carefully manufactured. The power you wielded was an illusion I created, and one that my granddaughter now controls completely. I paused, looking up to meet Alexander's eyes. The confident executive who had walked into the restaurant hours ago with his mistress was gone, replaced by a man confronting the artificial nature of his entire adult life. The choice before you is simple, the letter concluded. You can accept your new position, working under my granddaughter's authority, using this opportunity to finally develop genuine skills and understanding. Or you can walk away, but understand that walking away means leaving with nothing but the knowledge of how thoroughly you were outmaneuvered by the quiet, retired widow you never took seriously. The grandfather clock's steady ticking filled the heavy silence that followed my grandmother's letter. Beyond the private dining room's mahogany doors, the restaurant had emptied, leaving us alone with the weight of revelations and choices. Alexander sat motionless, his carefully curated world stripped bare by the words of a woman who had seen through him from the very beginning. Diana stepped forward, presenting another document with her characteristic quiet efficiency. Your updated employment contract, Mr. Blackwood. Should you choose to stay, these terms are non-negotiable. The papers landed on the table with a soft whisper, like autumn leaves falling in a quiet garden. The senior staff has already been briefed, Jonathan added, his tone measured and professional. They've known the truth about the command structure for years. Those meetings where you thought you were giving orders? They were reporting to Mrs. Blackwood through secure channels immediately afterward, receiving their actual instructions. Alexander's fingers traced the edge of the contract, his signet ring catching the light. The same ring he had worn so proudly as a symbol of his supposed authority now seemed like a prop in an elaborate stage production that had finally reached its final act. "Marcus in accounting," he said softly, realization dawning. The way he always seemed to anticipate my requests, always had reports ready before I asked for them. "Marcus has been with the family for 20 years, I confirmed, watching another piece of his illusion crumble. Those casual conversations by the coffee machine where he fed you market insights? Scripted. Every piece of information you received was carefully selected and timed." Grace Chen produced another file, this one containing emails and meeting notes spanning the past 5 years. "Your entire communication network within the company has been monitored and managed. Every spontaneous interaction, every chance encounter that led to a business opportunity, all orchestrated to maintain your belief in your own autonomy while keeping you within carefully defined parameters." The rain continued its steady rhythm against the windows, nature's applause for the unveiling of my grandmother's masterpiece of manipulation. Alexander picked up his water glass, his hand trembling slightly as he raised it to his lips. "The charity boards," he said, after a moment, his voice barely above a whisper. "The social connections, the club memberships." "All arranged," Diana confirmed, consulting her tablet. "The invitations you received, the introductions that seemed so fortuitous. Every aspect of your social standing was curated to support the narrative we needed to maintain. Even your tailor reports to us. Those exclusive fittings? Scheduled and monitored to ensure you maintain the appropriate image." The weight of understanding seemed to physically age Alexander before our eyes. Every achievement he had claimed, every connection he had bragged about, every success he had used to bolster his ego, all revealed as elaborate props in a production designed to test his character. "Your private banking team at Morgan Stanley," Jonathan continued, laying out another set of documents. "They've been managing a shadow portfolio that dwarfs the accounts you knew about. Every trade you thought you initiated independently was matched and balanced by transactions you never saw. Your actual net worth is significantly different from what you believed." Alexander's eyes scanned the figures, his financial expertise allowing him to quickly grasp the magnitude of the deception. The investment genius he had prided himself on was revealed as another carefully maintained illusion. "The Christmas bonuses you so generously distributed each year?" I added, watching his face carefully. "The ones you took credit for in front of the entire staff? Those came from a discretionary fund my grandmother established decades ago. Your generous gesture was simply you allocating money that was already designated for that purpose." Diana's tablet chimed again, this time displaying a series of surveillance photos. "Your weekly squash games at the club? Your regular lunch? Meetings? Your supposedly chance encounters with industry leaders? All monitored, all reported, all part of the carefully constructed environment we maintained around you." The systematic dismantling of Alexander's reality continued as Grace Chen produced yet another document. "Your position on the symphony board, your membership in the business roundtable, your speaking engagements at industry conferences, all arranged through Mrs. Eleanor Blackwood's network of connections. The standing ovations you received? The audience was always seated with people who knew exactly when to applaud. Alexander's world had become a house of cards, and each revelation was another gentle breath bringing it closer to collapse. The power he had wielded, the respect he had commanded, the very foundation of his adult identity, all revealed as an elaborate construction designed to test his character, a test he had fundamentally failed. "The choice before you is simple," I said, echoing my grandmother's words. "You can accept the reality of your position, working under my direct supervision, using this opportunity to finally develop genuine abilities. Or you can leave with nothing but the knowledge of how thoroughly you were manipulated by the women you underestimated. Morning light filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of what had once been Alexander's executive office. The space had been transformed overnight, my grandmother's elegant touches replacing his modern minimalist aesthetic. The mahogany desk where he had once held court now bore my nameplate, while his belongings had been efficiently relocated to a much smaller office 3 floors below. Diana entered with her usual quiet efficiency, carrying the morning's financial reports. The Asian markets responded positively to the announcement, she noted, placing the documents before me. Our stock is up 12% since the opening. Belle, the transition appears to be proceeding exactly as your grandmother predicted. The city stretched out below, its morning rhythms unchanged by the seismic shifts that had occurred in our corporate tower. From my new vantage point, I could see Alexander arriving in his company car, no longer the flagship Mercedes he had favored, but a more modest vehicle befitting his revised position. The driver, now reporting directly to my office, would log his every movement throughout the day. He arrived early, Diana observed, following my gaze. The security team reports he spent 20 minutes in his new office, adjusting to the space. The ergonomics team will visit him this afternoon to ensure his workstation meets our standard requirements. No special accommodations. The morning sun caught the emerald pendant now resting in my jewelry box, the same design Alexander had given Victoria, but this one had been my grandmother's, a symbol of real power rather than borrowed authority. I touched it gently, remembering her lessons about the weight of true responsibility. His morning briefing begins in 10 minutes, Diana continued, consulting her tablet. The team has prepared a comprehensive overview of his actual responsibilities, stripped of the artificial authority we previously maintained. The organizational chart has been updated to reflect the real reporting structure. Grace Chen arrived next, her legal briefcase containing the final documents needed to cement Alexander's new reality. The board meeting is set for 9, she announced, arranging papers on the conference table. We've prepared statements addressing any potential questions about the leadership transition. Everything has been positioned as a natural evolution of the company's succession plan. Through the glass walls, I could see Alexander navigating the unfamiliar territory of his new floor. Gone were the deferential nods from passing executives. They now hurried past with barely a glance, their true allegiances finally visible. The personal assistant who had once catered to his every whim had been replaced by a no-nonsense administrator who would report his activities directly to my office. Victoria has accepted the terms of her separation agreement, Grace added, producing another document. The non-disclosure provisions are comprehensive. She's been relocated to our Seattle office, a lateral move that keeps her employed but well removed from any sensitive operations. Jonathan Pierce entered with the morning's trading updates. The market commentary has been overwhelmingly positive, he reported. The analysts are praising the smooth transition of power, noting how well prepared the company was for this succession. Your grandmother's reputation for strategic planning is enhancing confidence in the new leadership structure. The morning sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the city below. In his new office, Alexander was discovering the true scope of his role. No longer the imagined captain of industry, but a middle manager whose authority extended only as far as we allowed. His calendar, now managed by our central scheduling system, would fill with the mundane meetings and routine tasks he had once delegated to others. The staff town hall is scheduled for 11, Diana reminded me. We've prepared talking points, emphasizing continuity and stability. The employees who knew the truth have been instructed to maintain professional distance from Mr. Blackwood, helping to reinforce his new position in the hierarchy. A soft knock announced the arrival of Marcus from accounting, carrying the final performance metrics from Alexander's tenure as perceived leader. The audit team has completed their review, he reported. Every decision he thought he made independently has been traced back to its actual source. The pattern of manipulation is quite remarkable. Your grandmother's influence touched every aspect of his professional life. The morning light caught the crystal awards on my shelf, recognition of achievements that had been real, earned through years of quiet work behind the scenes, while Alexander played his part in the foreground. Now those awards would be joined by others, acknowledgement of the power that had always been mine, but had waited for this moment to become visible. His first performance review is scheduled for next month, Diana noted. We'll establish clear metrics for his actual contributions, stripped of the artificial successes we previously manufactured. His compensation package has been adjusted accordingly, competitive for his new position, but no longer inflated by imagined authority. The city continued its morning dance below, unaware of the power shift that had occurred in our tower of glass and steel. Alexander's world had been reconstructed according to my grandmother's design. His reality reshaped to reflect the truth that had always existed beneath the carefully maintained illusion. Up next, you've got 2 more remarkable stories of transformation waiting for you. Each one reveals how unexpected turns of fate can lead to powerful moments of justice and revelation. Just click through to discover more tales of hidden strength coming to light.